I think he's one of those great heroes in this struggle.
Man never asked anything for himself.
I would say that Jake Simmons was an interpreter of history.
He did mount himself as one of the richest Negroes in America, a millionaire.
Jake wanted the black race to become uplifted.
Every time I tried to do anything politically, I wanted him on my side. Yes, sir.
Jake Simmons, America's first black oil millionaire, was born in 1902 in that part of the United States which was later to be called Oklahoma, then known as Indian Territory. Indian law had adopted blacks as equal members of the tribe, and Simmons' great-grandfather had been a chief of the Creek Indian tribe.
So the Creek Indian and black people in this particular area were more or less, their lives were intertwined.
I would say he was just as concerned about women and Indians and anybody else that he thought was not being given the opportunity.
Jake was the president of the NAACP. I was the advisor of the NAACP Youth Council in Oklahoma City.
The NAACP in those days was on the cutting edge. Many people refer to being a member of the NAACP as the same as being communist. Oklahoma was probably the field ground for most of the NAACP's leading lawsuits. There was a case in Wagner County that struck down the grandfather clause. And as a child, I remember very vividly going and raising nickels, dimes, quarters, and dollars to finance the, with my, tagging along with my dad, to finance the court cases.
One time we had a meeting, a state meeting over here, and it was really an exciting meeting because we were dreaming of going downtown, really eating at the Skirvin Hotel, which was the Waldorf Astoria Hotel of Oklahoma City. We walked into the Skirvin Hotel, and a big old white man pushed him. And at that moment, Jake Simmons proved to us beyond the shadow of a doubt that he was not a nonviolent man. I have never seen anybody as angry as Jake was, and although he was very devoted to the cause, he called that man everything that he could think of. I intervened, called Jake aside, and told him that he had flunked his test in citology. He handed me $25 to help feed the kids that day, and I was happy to see him leave the Skirvin Hotel.
Long before many of the public accommodations were integrated, my dad would stop and eat at them. I mean, he was just fearless. He got telephone calls, usually on a regular basis, that they'd blow up our home. And looking back on it in retrospect, it's a miracle he wasn't killed, either here in Oklahoma or in East Texas, which was a jungle. But there were always, again, some white people there who felt that his cause was right and that he was a businessman and that a very successful one and a very honest one.
The fact that he competed with the white man in a time when he didn't have much rights and was successful, and which really interested me. And the longer I worked with him, I could understand why he was successful, because he was a fine person, a person you could trust, and very knowledgeable. He had a drilling company, he had a royalty company, he had an oil company, and he did work for other people and had some ranching interest. And, you know, he just is a good business person.
During the Depression years, Jake Simmons made his fortune buying oil leases in one of the most racist parts of the country, East Texas.
East Texas was a place that essentially black people had no rights. And East Texas was close to Louisiana, and the black population there was cotton country, and so a high concentration of black people. And the Klan was very active in that area, and a black person could be killed there essentially, and there'd be nothing done about it. He had a lot of enemies too, you know, because he wouldn't compromise on racial grounds. I mean, just absolutely wouldn't compromise on it. My father was a man who was driven by a mission, and therefore when you have something to do, you don't think about death. Blacks here were part of the West. We had guns, knew how to use them, wouldn't tolerate any nonsense from anybody that wanted to take advantage of us. Black businessmen from the South were aggressive and wanted to be employed by themselves, and the only way you could have freedom or a touch of independence from a racially unjust system was to be your own master.
By the 1950s, Jake Simmons became a key player in the global expansion of the oil industry. He was awarded the Grand Medal by the government of Ghana for his help in developing their oil resources.
To attain the level of knowledge that was required to enable me to do my job of finding oil onshore or offshore Ghana at the time. I mean, this was the man who was going to give the finale to all the knowledge that I was then trying to obtain.
He was a businessman, and he believed very strongly in making money. That you had to be financially independent, and he was a complete 100% capitalist and made no apologies for it. He believed in hard work. He believed in all of the things that made this country great.
I would say a lot of leaders, United States senators, members of Congress, governors and lieutenant governors and legislative leaders many times went to him for advice, political advice, as well as just good judgment.
He was good enough to make a breakthrough for his race. He did it so well and so efficiently that he earned the respect of every man. And when you earn the respect of a man, you can sit down and talk to him and you don't recognize his color or creed or religion or anything else. And it was a breakthrough. He really made an impact on the industry that was important. And since there have been many black men that have had an opportunity to pursue their efforts in this industry that would have never had an opportunity if it hadn't been for Jake on his original breakthrough.
As a compelling example of individual perseverance in the face of widespread racism, Jake Simmons left a permanent impression on those who knew him.
I liked his generosity. He was a very generous type person. Like, there was this one man, I don't know his name, but he came up to my mother in the pharmacy, and he was, you know, he hadn't realized my grandfather had passed, but he was talking about how my grandfather had bought him food during the Depression. You know, he and his family were starving. And my grandpa went out, took him to the store and told him to buy anything he wanted. You know, whatever. And he said he didn't ever have to pay him back or anything.
I can remember many, many times Mr. Simmons calling me, and he'd always say, "Representative, can you go with me for a few minutes?" And I'd say, "Well, where are we going, Mr. Simmons?" And he'd say, "I want you to meet someone. It's real important that you meet someone this afternoon." And I'd say, "Well, yes, I'll go." And about the time I'd get ready to say, "What time would you like to go?" he'd say, "I'll be by there in 10 minutes. And really, he'd be by in 10 minutes, you know, and he'd be out in front, and we'd go see the individual.
And who would it be?
Just someone that needed help. It may be a young lady that had a baby that he felt that she was entitled for some public assistance regarding the child. It may be a person that he wanted to help get a college education. All types of people the man tried to help, and I think probably with most of them he probably got it done once he decided that that's who he wanted to help.
And I think Jake Simmons' success will be in what we didn't see, the contacts that we didn't know about, the telephone calls that he was able to make. Because I have stood down there on the streets a minute day and somebody walked up to me that I didn't know and say, "I'm a friend of Jake Simmons. I want you to have good luck." And I'm nobody's fool. I know my success has been because I've been standing on somebody else's back.
He was trying to show that blacks not only need equal opportunity for employment, that they need equal opportunity for making decisions, and I totally concur with it. And I would say that he set that foundation for major decisions I've made in state government. And I really mean that. I'm not just throwing something out for an interview.
I remember one time, I must have been about 6 years old, and my mother told me to go out and sweep the porch, and my grandfather drives up and he sees me sweeping this porch and he goes, "You're not sweeping that porch right." Booker T. Washington swept this porch 3 times before he got into Tuskegee, and he went over it with a rag, you know. And so my grandfather, I guess, maybe Booker T. Washington showed him how to sweep. I don't know, but he had me with this porch. I must have had calluses on my hand when I was through sweeping that porch. He used to go from one end to the other end. Now you collect that dust, and my grandfather would go back, and he'd look, you know, and he'd just look for dirt. I mean, you know, you can't really sweep a porch but so well because the dirt's going to blow more on it again. You know, so I was there. I must have been there the whole day.
There's a poem that he would recite all the time. When they'd ask him, "Why are you building this bridge? You an old man and this is the close of the day." And the end of it came out like, "Young man, I'm building this bridge for you."
You were always racially conscious in my home. He believed that the way for black people to compete in the world is that we could never be as good as, we had to be better. Therefore, he let us know that he expected in anything that we did that we had to be better than anyone else. If you cut the lawn, you had to cut it better. You had to edge it. You had to do everything that you should have done. If you did the house, clean the house, we never had people working for us except we as children. You had to do it better than anyone else. He believed in anything that you do, had to do it thoroughly.
The day Jake Simmons died in 1982, the flags at all state buildings in Oklahoma flew at half-mast. Simmons called himself a crusader for human dignity, which he believed was as precious as life itself.
To me, he was a symbol of what I consider to be a great Oklahoman and a great American.
He was leader for the struggle of independence and dignity for our people.
And one more thing that he had in his favor, he's a very handsome man. Very handsome. Very handsome, very successful, very knowledgeable, and very humble. That was the Jake Simmons that I remember most.